to the lighter side of the dark side. It's your weekly freak show here on Steel Waves Radio, Renegade Radio, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, Deezer, wherever you're catching us, YouTube. It's the Dark Mark Show. I am Dark Mark, the goth comedian. I actually put on a blazer here in the 90-degree heat because we have a very special guest. But first, my co-host is here. She's not on camera, but everybody's favorite vegan heavy metal DJ, Hannah Bach.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hi, Hannah.
And?
I tell our guests how excited I am about the show today.
You are very excited. You've been going on about it for about a couple of days now. You're just super excited. And sending me photos and videos.
Well, there's a reason I'm excited because there's some legendary names in show business you may have heard of, like, I don't know, Johnny Carson, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Smokey Robinson, Orson Welles, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. This man has performed with them all. It's Tom Dreesen.
Yay!
Well, thank you. You named a couple of names in there that Orson Welles I never worked with, but I used to do the Dean Martin.
Yes, you did.
And he would be on there. Yeah, he was.
You were on the Dean Martin roast with Orson Welles.
Yes, and I also I did several Dean Martin roasts, but it was always a lot of fun because I was a big fan of Dean's before I ever met him, And those roasts were legendary, and I'm probably one of the only ones alive today that was on those roasts. Every time you just I look and I go, oh, he's gone. Well, he's gone. And standing,
I was watching there's on Amazon Prime. There's a Dean Martin roast of George Burns that you are on, and I see the Comedy Central roast, and it's a big deal if they get Jeffrey Ross. They had Ronald Reagan and Orson Welles, and I think they were sitting on either side of LaWanda Page from Sanford and Son, and Don Rickles, and like everybody. It was an amazing, surreal roast.
I'm going to tell you something interesting. When the first Dean Martin roast I did was for a guy named Dan Haggerty. He had a show called
Grizzly Adams.
Grizzly Adams, right? And in there, I did a stupid, obscure joke for my act. It was a joke called AHMO. I said, I was on a Tonight Show one night, monologue talking about the tough guys in my neighborhood. And the black guys had a word that white guys didn't use called AMO, AHMO. AMO, kick ass, I'm going to kick you. And so when I'm roasting Dan Haggerty, Grizzly Adams, I said, he's supposed to be a tough guy from the country. I said, we have tough guys in my neighborhood. We use the word in my neighborhood they don't use in the country. AMO, AHMO, AMO, kick your butt. Now, you'll see Dean Martin laughing, Abe Vigoda, all them people laughing. I never thought more about that was a dumb joke, just a dumb setup joke. 37 years go by. I get a letter from a woman from Wiley, Texas. And she said, Tom, I went to the same high school as you in the south side of Chicago, but I'm a teacher in Wiley, Texas now. And we won in 1977, we won the state football championship. Our coach was a guy named Jerry Schaefer. Jerry Schaefer was his name. He said, and he came back to the school. We were not supposed to win the state championship. We were playing a team called Breckenridge, and they were blowing everybody out by 30 points. He said, but this coach, we won the championship with 6 minutes left to go. We won the state high school championship. He came back to teach, and they now have studios. And they said, Coach, how did you do that with the team? He said, he came up with a thing. He said, I was watching the Dean Martin roast Sunday night before our first Monday practice. We're playing the following Saturday. And on there's a comedian named Tom Dreesen, and he's doing this joke, AMO, AHMO. He said, I went and told our teammates, I didn't think we could beat this team that we were playing. I told them, that's our battle cry. We're going to go in the huddle. We're going to go, AMO. He said, we're going to break out, AMO. He said, when we kneel down up against a guy, we're going to go, AMO, AMO, kick your butt, man, AMO. They began to chant that the whole game. They win the game with 6 seconds left to go. I was telling you all this, and they send me the video of this coach. The cheerleaders go back to the town and they put AMO on all the stores. They wrote AMO, HMO. Then they started selling gloves, AMO, hats, AMO, belts, shirts, sweatshirts, AMO. The football players were AMO across their chest. And now when the team is winning or losing, the crowd is chanting AMO, AMO, AMO. I think she's bullshitting me. I'm going, this can't be true. Now, they send me all the video. I end up taking on Letterman. If you get a chance, when you get a chance, download Tom Dreesen AHMO, AHMO. It'll show. I went back to the school. I went back and I talked to the students. 37 years later, I never knew anything about it. Never knew anything about it. And now they became their back. And again, they not only have it on bracelets, on shirts, on sweaters, on hats. They go around the country, the students, if they can get people to take a picture with a sign AHMO, they get so many points for a trip or something like that. So they've got Nobel Peace Prize people holding up the sign AHMO. They got authors, they got celebrity stars. And they sent me a wedding. A couple got married with AHMO on the floor where they got married by their feet. I've written 1,000 jokes in my career. That's the dumbest joke I've ever written.
And Letterman said you should get a cut from the sales they're getting.
Yeah, well, you know, when I got there, I found out that what they did wisely, I never knew this, but in 1990-something, 98, they trademarked it off of a clothing. I didn't know you could trademark a word, but you can trademark it on clothing, which is okay with me. You know, all the money goes to the students, so I don't care. I only lost probably $3 or $4 million out of that.
Right.
You know?
I don't know if it's a great idea if you're getting married to have AHMO, but I guess knowing a lot of married people, it's appropriate.
No.
Probably 4 or 5 million more. I might have had a shot at Hannah, but not a new boyfriend.
Hannah just got engaged. That's why I'm doing the joke. But that's Hannah's friend Christy there. I told you, Hannah, I'm barely going to get a word at edgewise, and you know how fast and a lot that I talk.
Yes.
Before we get going, and I've got so many questions, Tom.
Okay.
Real quick, you're here to promote your book, and that's still standing. My journey from the streets and saloons to the stage in Sinatra. And if it's anything like your first book, which I have, Tim and Tom, it's gonna. You'd say it's way better because it's about your whole career. Yeah. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah. Well, you know, the first book, Tim, Reid, and I were America's first black and white comedy team. History showed we were the last. We did we toured all over the nation, and that was written 15 years ago. And as the first black and white comedy team, there were no comedy clubs in those days. So we worked all black clubs in the North and the South, what they affectionately call the Chitlin Circuit.
That's what I was going to ask you. You've been doing comedy so long, there were no comedy clubs when you started.
No, there was one in New York, but it wasn't a comedy club. It was the improvisation, but they didn't pay. They had a singer on and then have a comedian just get up and do a few minutes, but there were none. And so we toured the nation doing, you work nightclubs in those days. That's the way it was. And again, we paid dues like no other act paid. That, now 15 years go by, and the reason I'm writing this book is because this is more about my life coming from the streets. I had 8 brothers and sisters. We lived in a shack. We had raggedy, had holes in my shoes. If you got holes in your shoes, you put a piece of cardboard in. If a window in the shack, you stuck a rag in it. We were raggedy poor, and I would shine shoes in all the bars in my neighborhood in the southside of Chicago, and to help raise money to feed my brothers and sisters. And while I was on my hands and knees shining shoes, Frank Sinatra was on the jukebox. So that's the first time I heard him as a little boy. So the book is basically that little boy hearing Frank Sinatra on the jukebox in Harvey, Illinois, to one day carrying his coffin out of the hills. So it's that journey. And I got knocked down a lot. And that's why I'm a stand-up comedian 50 years, but I'm still standing after being knocked down, even if you read the book, even physically knocked down.
And so definitely get the book. Also, just real quick, and I'm just going to take like a minute. If you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to this on a podcast channel, check out the comments because we have an Audible link where you can get a free, and I'm sure your book will be on Audible soon, but it's not there yet. But Audible, you can get a free book, 2 free books, or a free book and a free Audible original and a 30-day trial. We also have Hustler Hollywood. We have a link for 20% off. Spy Associates, if you want to spy on somebody, we got a link for 20% off. And we have a link for 15% off my favorite energy drink, Reid's Energy, which I have right here. Tom Dreesen has a great. Tom, tell them about the first time you drank Red Bull.
Oh yeah, we just watched that.
I always tell everybody, I was in a golf tournament in Palm Springs, and in the desert, and I played 3 days in a row, and then the 4th day after I finished playing, I had to drive into LA to do a show, and I stopped to fill up for gas in Palm Springs, and I was a little concerned about falling asleep at the wheel because it's like a 2.5-hour drive, and I've been playing golf for 4 days, and I saw that Red Bull in the refrigerator, And I tell the audience, have you ever drank that Red Bull? I said, I had 2 cans of that Red Bull. I was halfway back to Los Angeles before I realized I left my car in the station back in Palm Springs.
So, and this is way better than Red Bull. But anyway, so it is. I'm actually drinking Galaxy Burst. It's delicious. Here's my first question, Tom.
Okay.
10 minutes in there, I got a question. When was the last time you were in front of a crowd doing comedy?
5 months ago.
Is this the longest hiatus you've had in 51 years?
Absolutely. Wow. And I tell you, it's like, I'm also a motivation speaker. So I give motivation talks at universities and for corporate America on 4 subjects: perception, visualization, self-talk, and develop a sense of humor. And I elaborate on those 4 points. So, but number one, perception, this lockdown, and like you're saying, 5 months without getting on stage. But I think of it, I say, okay, what can I find that is good about this? I mean, it's not good that people are dying or people are sick, but okay, life is like 90% of, or 10% of what happens to, but 90% of what you perceive it to be, of your attitude that you choose. So I look at it and I say, you know what I'm learning about this? I'm learning about how much I really, truly love my family and how much I truly love my friends. I miss hugging my children. I miss hugging my grandkids. I miss hugging my friends. I'm a hugger by nature, So this is what I thought about. I said, okay, this has taught me a real good lesson. I always thought I loved my family and friends, but now I know how much I love my family and friends. So you can look at it that this, in some ways, how can we benefit from this crisis?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've been saying the same thing. I miss human contact. I miss hugging, or even just a handshake. I mean, it's and I really miss going up in front of a crowd and making them laugh. I've done Zoom shows, and you've done Zoom shows, but it's not the same.
No, that first of all, when you think about what we are. If you're a juggler, you're a singer, a comedian, your energy that goes out, your songs go out to that audience, all the way through the audience and all the way back to us, all the way through the audience and all the way back to us, like an electrical current. Now, when you tell people, 5 of you sit over there, 4 sit in the back, 3 just took a scissors and cut off that contact that we need to make it electric, to make it work,
Right.
And so that's what I'm concerned about more than anything, to have a problem with, that when we go back, people are OCD now, and they're not going to want to sit in crowds shoulder to shoulder.
I was going to ask this later, but this really segues into what we're talking about now. What is it like? Because I've opened for rock bands, but normally that's, you just get the crowd pumped and really get energized and work with the crowd. What is it like to walk out at Madison Square Garden or the Forum or something of that size, 20,000 people, and you come out and you're doing comedy to them, opening for Frank Sinatra? What is that like? And what's your technique? How is that different technically from doing the clubs?
Here's what I say, what it's like opening for Frank Sinatra. When I met Frank Sinatra, I had been touring already around the country with a lot of different artists, so I had some, I was a veteran. I also had done like 30 or 40 Tonight shows, but I had never done what I was about to do. When you open for Frank Sinatra, you've got 5 minutes before you're going on. There's 20,000 people in the Staples Center or in Nassau Coliseum or whatever. In Hawaii, there was 40,000 people outdoors. But you say, okay, this is your mission, Mark. I want you to go out there, and for the next 45 minutes, I want you to hold their attention. There's 20,000 people out there, Mark, and they're all around you. You're in the round. So I want you to hold their attention for the next 35 minutes, say. And say, oh, more than that, Mark, I want you to hold their attention, but I want you to make them laugh for the next 35 minutes. Oh, Mark, one more thing. I want you to hold their attention, make them laugh. I want you to make them laugh when you want them to laugh. I want you to pull the strings on the emotions of 20,000 people. No props, no tricks, charts, no special arrangement, no orchestra, nothing. Just you and 20,000 people. And one more thing, Mark, not one of them came to see you.
That's pressure.
That is a lot.
And that's what you had to do every night. But I teach young comedians, if you ever have to do this, if you ever have to go out there in front of that many people, you never put your A material up front. The first thing I would do, make a joke on you. Now, when you're working in front of 20,000 people, chances are 2,000 or 3,000 are still trying to find their seats. So you got to you got to bring their attention right now to the center stage there. First of all, let me digress. What happens is the arena goes dark and the whole arena goes, whoa. And then the band starts up there in the pit. They start, bum, ba, da, dum, ba. Everybody goes, oh. And then they introduce me. People thought Frank was coming out, So I go out and I say, how many of you out there, I want you to applaud. How many of you out there thought Frank Sinatra was coming out? Applaud. But applaud. And I say, I know how you feel. I'm a little bit disappointed myself, Now, the first joke was on me. But when you notice what I said there, I said applaud. Then my next line was, how many of you out there are in this arena for your very first time? Applaud. And they would applaud. I'd say, how many of you out there are seeing Frank Sinatra live your very first time? Then they would applaud. I'd say, how many of you out there aren't wearing any underwear? Applaud. They would applaud. My point was, I talk, you react. I talk, you react. I'm talking to everybody in the arena. I'm walking behind people behind me, people in front of me. I talk, you react. I'm bringing the attention to me. I then do a local joke about something that happened in their community, and then maybe another local joke. And before I went into my A material, but I made sure that focused to me, to get their attention. It's a couple of tricks I learned from inspiration. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
That's amazing to learn, Hannah.
Yeah. I'm going to use that.
Frank, did you learn anything as far as that helpful in your act from turning what Frank Sinatra did? Was there anything that he did on stage that you incorporated in your actor that inspired you?
Well, fortunately, before I met Frank, I toured with Sammy Davis Jr. I toured with Smokey Robinson. I toured with Natalie Cole, artists. I toured with some great artists. And you always, we learn by watching, studying the masters. I tell every young comedian, you want to be a comedian? I say, study the masters. If you're going to become
Tom Dreesen.
Right,
exactly.
But if you were going to become a brain surgeon, you wouldn't just study brain surgery. You'd go watch the brain surgeon operate. So watch comedians operate, and eventually you'll see one that you like that style. And you'll say, oh, I like the way she or he approaches the mic, or how do they do that? And so you watch it, and eventually you all new comedians go on stage emulating another comedian because they knew that worked. So they're basically doing an impression of another comedian till they find their legs, right? Eventually, after so many open mic nights and or whatever, you start to evolve. You start to become you become Hannah, who Hannah is. You become who Mark is. You just let a little bit of you out one night. If it gets a laugh, you let a little bit of you out until you finally become you on stage. That's what you're in search for, becoming you specifically. There's never been anybody on this planet like you before. Nobody's had your same mom and dad, your same parents, your same upbringing, your same siblings, whatever. So you're unique as a snowflake. So when you find that and you're comfortable being Hannah or comfortable being Mark, then that's when you're on your way. So what I learned from the masters, sitting in the wings watching these masters, when they went out on stage, that's who they were. They had a stage persona. Some people are a continuation of themselves. Other people have a stage persona. I'm a continuation of me. The same guy you're talking here is the same guy I am on stage. Other people like David Letterman, nervous, quiet, shy. Johnny Carson, nervous, quiet, shy. But when the light hit them and they went up, they had a stage persona. And you end up taking command of that stage. What I tell young comedians is, I say, Hannah, we got 20 people in the living room, and I don't have dinner. You go out there and tell them some of those stories about when you were growing up, and tell them about some of your relationships, whatever. Now, go tell those funny stories you tell us. Now, my point of that is, I said, Hannah, when you walk out on stage every night, no matter what town you're in, this is our house. It's not their house. If they could do what we do, they'd be up on stage. They can't do what we do. That's why they're audience and we're on stage. So when we walk out there, don't walk out like, oh God, I hope these people, I'm in their territory. They're in our territory. This is our house. And it's a conversation, not a presentation. You go out there and is it your act? You damn right it's your act. It's your job to make it look like it's not an act. So it's a conversation, not a presentation.
Now, is this something that you learned because you started out in the black clubs? And I played black clubs myself, and as a white comedian, you really got established right off the bat. I'm me, and I'm not afraid of you, and you're gonna laugh.
That you're turning that into a black-white issue. I turn that into an audience. I am me, and who are you to any audience. I did an album in front of an all-black audience called "That White Boy's Crazy."
I was listening to it. It's great.
Now, people say to me, people say, "How could you? Did you go out there? Weren't you afraid?" I said, "What color is laughter? What color? There's no color to laughter. I've worked all Jewish audiences, all Black audiences. I've worked all Italian audiences. I believe it or not, I worked all Irish audiences. What color is laughter? If you young comedians start out afraid of audiences, period. But when you get control, I'll give you a reason why you are the greatest profession on the planet. The insurance companies of America did a survey for 8 years for around the world. It took them 8 years. Of the 10 fears of man, death was fourth, pain was second. Being up in front of an audience was the number one fear of mankind. If you're a house painter or a lawyer or a truck driver and you can get up in front of an audience for an hour and talk about your life's experiences, you're in less than 1% of the population of the world. If you're a comedian, you can get up and make people laugh for an hour, you're in less than 1/1,000,000th of 1% of the population of the world. Do you know how unique you are? Not only that, laughter is healing. It's not a theory anymore. Because of Norman Cousins, who wrote the book Laughter Math, and he wrote another book called The Anatomy of an Illness. He was dying of a terminal illness. The doctors told him he was going to die. He was in a hospital because of stress in his life. He had a heart condition. He decided input stress. He decided if negative input made him ill, positive input could make him well. He checked out of the hospital. He would only watch I Love Lucy reruns, Candid Camera, Three Stooges, the Marx Brothers, and he only would listen to comedy albums. He wouldn't watch evening news. He laughed himself to health. He lived 27 years after the doctors told him he was going to die. Because of him, UCLA did research on what happens to the human body when you laugh. When you laugh heartily, endorphins are released from the brain into the bloodstream. So after a hearty laugh with tears in your eyes, you go, oh, this sense of well-being comes over you. It's because your body has gone through an actual chemical change. And we always have known laughter logically a deterrent because the brain can't think of two thoughts at the same time. So if you're watching a comedian, you're not thinking of your problems, so it's a deterrent, right? So laughter is psychologically deterrent. Now we know because of UCLA, it's physiologically therapeutic. So therefore, comedians are physicians of the soul, Dr. Hannah and Dr. Mark. There you go.
That's beautiful. My grandfather always says that too. He says you have to keep laughing.
But
that's what he's doing.
It's interesting your grandfather would say that, although he didn't know the scientific research, it's just something that he knew intuitively that laughter is good. 10,000 years ago, there were tribes, Indian tribes, that their doctor in the Indian tribe would make them laugh. He was always making them laugh. They were like clowns. And they researched this and found this out to be true, that they didn't have the science on it, but somehow they knew that laughter had a healing effect on the body.
But yeah, the thing about, and you've been making people laugh forever. I mean, for a long, long time. But you got into it late. I mean, you were a businessman. You were, I believe, in insurance, and you had other businesses, and you were a part of the Junior Chamber of Commerce, also the JCs, known as the JCs, where you met Tim Reid. And how you got into comedy was you weren't trying to be a comedian. You put together an anti-drug program for kids.
Yeah, we were teaching grade school children. I wrote a program teaching grade school children the ills of drug abuse with humor. It's a concept I had on getting the children playing music and getting the children laughing, and then planting the seeds of the ills of drug abuse. Now, they weren't teaching drug education in those days at a college level or a high school level, let alone at an elementary school level. And the program became, let me digress. Before that, I was praying, literally praying to God. I was job to job. I had spent 4 years in the military, came out of the service, had a wife and 3 kids. I was going through one job after another. I didn't feel fulfilled. I kept thinking, there must be something I'm supposed to be doing. This can't be it. I sit in bars with my buddies at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, say, I don't belong here, but I didn't know where I belong. And I literally prayed. I'd say, God, please help me. There must be something. Every job I did well, but I didn't have that feeling inside. So writing this drug education program, just trying to help kids with the ills of drug abuse. Tim Reid and I were both in the JCs, and we worked with me on the project, and we made the kids laugh. And one day, a little girl leaving the classroom, an 8th grade classroom, she stopped by Tim and I, and she said, you guys are so funny. You ought to become a comedy team. An 8th grade girl. And the thought of a black-white comedy team intrigued us because no one had ever done that before. So we went out and we started writing and paying our dues,
In the age of race riots and, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X being shot and just
Martin Luther King being shot. Martin Luther King was shot. Bobby Kennedy. Race riots all over America. Students protesting the Vietnam War. Not unlike it is right now. But
that's what I was going to say. I mean, you've seen this cycle a few times. It's sad.
what Tim and I did, we would go everywhere where there was racial tension, colleges, high school, and we didn't preach or anything. We just made people laugh. You know, we always had the theory that if we could get people to sit down and laugh together, maybe they could live together.
Yeah.
You know? And what happened was interesting. Everywhere we went, and you know what? I'll take this to my grave. I don't care about awards. My house is loaded with stupid words that you get for doing certain things. In the years that Tim and I toured together, I can't tell you how many times colleges and in the high schools where after we performed, we would sign autographs or take pictures or talk to the kids. A black kid would come up and say, you know, I got a white friend and I'd like to reach out to him, but if I do, the brothers are going to wear me out. But, you know, after watching you and Tim, I want to reach out to my white friend. Then a white kid would come and say, you know, I got a black friend and I really like him, but, you know, everybody's going to tease us. Because in those days, you didn't see a black guy and a white guy walking down the street together, let alone on a stage together. But the white kid would say, I'm going to reach out to my friend. That means more to me and Tim than anything we could have ever done. Years later, when we did the book tour, we went to colleges. And I'd look on the campus and there'd be a white kid and an Asian kid walking across with their arms around each other, going somewhere or something. And Tim and I would just look at each other and grin because we remember when we were an anomaly, you know.
And if people don't know, Tim Reid had a very successful career after you broke up, was on WKRP in Cincinnati as Venus Flytrap, was in the show Frank's Place, a writer, director, actor, just phenomenal success after you broke up. And after you guys were in Chicago, after you broke up, you went to LA because at that time, Tonight Show was it if you had to be a comic.
Yeah, by the way, Hannah would remember Tim. He was on Sister Sister. Remember that show, Sister Sister?
I do remember that show.
Yeah.
He was the father, you know.
Oh, okay.
But he was very, and we're the best of friends today. In fact, we got other projects that we're going to do together. We're the best. His children call me Uncle Tom. You know, I've known them since they were born.
That's hilarious.
That's hilarious. Anyhow, yeah, the comedy team split up, and now I'm devastated. I didn't want the team to split up. Tim team up. He had a deal with a woman that messed up his marriage and broke up the comedy team. Now I'm sitting in a bar in Chicago, you know, my southside Chicago, my neighborhood. My wife was thrilled at that time. My ex-wife, I always figured her name. Oh yeah, Plaintiff. She was happy that the team broke up. She wanted me to get a job in a factory and in this crazy, silly dream of show business, you know. And I'm sitting in a bar with my buddies at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? The teams broke up, and it broke my heart because I had hopes that we would be the best comedy team in America. And now I'm sitting there and thinking, well, I could get another black guy and do the same act, or I could get a job in the factory like my wife wanted me to do and quit show business, or I could go it alone and be a stand-up on my own. And I said, thinking about it, I said, okay, I'm sitting at the bar and I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on being a stand-up. And I was always a good goal setter. And I said, my ultimate goal is the Tonight Show. Because in 1975, wherever you went in America, people say, what do you do for a living? You say, I'm a stand-up comedian. The next question out of their mouth was, oh, yeah, have you ever been on Johnny Carson? And if you hadn't been on Johnny Carson in the eyes of America, you just weren't a comedian. So I set
There were only 3 channels, so everybody's watching it.
26 million people watch that show every night. 26 million people. One appearance on that show, Freddie Prinze got a sitcom the next day. I did one appearance on that show. CBS signed me to a development deal the following day. A guy named Lee Curlin saw me on the show that night. Anyhow, I'm saying, I'm sitting at the bar and I'm thinking, okay, that's my goal. I'm going to go it alone. And then I remembered a book I read by Clement Stone, Positive Mental Attitude. And I remember he said, if you know what you want to do in life, if you find what it is you really want to do, and if it's a noble endeavor, then search your life and see if there's anything in your life that can deter you from that noble achievement and get it out of your life. And I thought, what could stop me if I wanted to make it as a stand-up comedian? The only thing I thought was alcohol. I loved drinking beer with the guys night. I could drink 10, 20 beers, go from bar to bar. I loved it. And I said, this could stop me because you can't wake up with hangovers and write material. So I said, I quit. And I had 2 beers in front of me that people had bought, and I shoved them at the end of the bar. And my buddy who was tending the bar came up. I said, I quit. He said, through for the night, huh, Tommy? I said, no, I quit. He said, you quit tonight? I said, no, I quit. I'm never going to drink again. He said, yeah, right. I was, but I never touched a drop again until I was a huge success on the Tonight Shows. I was doing all these shows all around. And one night I went out and had a beer, and it didn't taste like it did in the old days. And so I never drink anymore.
I mean, the run you had in the 70s, it's amazing. You were on the Tonight Show over with Johnny Carson over 60 times. You've been on with Leno since. But I didn't know you were on American Bandstand and Soul Train.
Soul Train. Well, you know, I did in those days. By the way, after I did my first appearance on the Tonight Show, I'm in the unemployment line. I got a wife and 3 kids out here. I couldn't hardly make rent money. The day after I got bumped 3 times. Every time I'd go to do the show, they ran out of time.
No.
Every time, and a week later, come back another week, come back another. And the 4th time I went, I'm in makeup room, and the producer, Fred DeCordova, came in the makeup room, and he said, I got bad news for you. I said, what? He said, you're going on tonight. And you don't know, I can't tell you, I'm a calm performer. I'm a motivational speaker. I know how to calm myself for the performance. I've been doing it a long time. But that first Tonight Show, there is no describing the pressure. Because you know, not only are 6 million people watching this, not only all the agents, managers, the bookers from Las Vegas, other singing acts who are looking for comedians to open for them. Not only that, but my mother had everybody back in Harvey, Illinois watching. So if I bombed, they couldn't even go back home, you know. Now, they come and get you out of the green room. Later, when I was a veteran, the stagehands would say, hey, Dreesen, how's your Cubs? Hey, Tommy, you break a leg, have a fun. But this first time when you're walking, they all see you coming. They turn their heads and they whisper, it's his first time. It's his first time, you know. Now you get behind
Right.
and they leave alone. And now Doc Severinsen's playing because they're in commercial break. And then the music stops and your heart stops because you're going on. And Johnny Carson says, we're back now. And I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight because my next guest is making his first appearance on the Tonight Show. Will you welcome Tom Dreesen? Now that one line, I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight. It sets the tone for the audience. You walk out there, they open up the curtain, you walk out and bright lights blinding you. You can't see the audience and you hit your mark on the floor and you get your first joke out and it got a laugh. And I got my second joke, got a laugh, and I got applause. And then I got a third. Oh. And then I heard Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon laughing and applauding. Now I got like 8 applause. I finished I finished and I said, you've been a marvelous audience. This is my first appearance on the Tonight Show. And show business is a tough life. So if you like me, just if you like me and you're Protestant, say a prayer. If you're Catholic, light a candle. If you're Jewish, somebody in your family owns a nightclub. Tell them about me. Will you please? Now, I walked through the curtain. The coordinator come running up. He said, go back. Johnny wants you back. I said, go sit by Johnny. He said, no, go back. Just go out. And I walked back through the curtain. They called me back for a second bow. And Johnny gave me that little circle with his finger.
Yeah.
And I never have stopped working since I was doing that. Right after that, the next day, these are the calls. Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Johnny Carson, a repeat, you know, Midnight Special, Rock Concert, Soul Train, American Bandstand. All these shows opened up to me, you know. And
I didn't know American Bandstand and Soul Train had comedy.
Yeah, they book comics. Mm-hmm. I'm the only white comedian to ever do Soul Train in those days. Because I have an album, like I say, in front of an all-black audience called That White Boy's Crazy, because I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood. I played basketball on an all-black basketball team. I played football on an all-black football team because we were poor. We were raggedy poor. So I grew up around the brothers. I grew up, you know, in sports. And so all my early routines were about that, about being the only white boy in an all-black situation. And Richard Pryor wanted me to call the album That Honky's Crazy because, you know, he had an album called That N-Word's Crazy, right?
Right.
But I said, Richard, no black person in my lifetime ever called me a honky. They always called me white boy, affectionately. They would say, even to this day, if I go back there now, some of the old guys are arguing about a game that we played. They'll say, man, I scored 2 touchdowns. You're a liar. No, hey, white boy was there. White boy, come here. White boy, tell him. I was 12 years old when I found out my name wasn't white boy, you know.
You got invited to all the cookouts.
Yeah, I mean, I that's my name. So when I did the album, everywhere I'd go, when I'd go on a Tonight Show or different shows and do routines about black people, growing up with black people, white people would come up to me and say, do black people laugh at your material? I got so tired of explaining that I cut an album and I'd have a CD with me and they'd say, do black people laugh at your material? And I said, give me 20 and I hand them the CD. So you find out for yourself, you know.
No, what struck me when I listened to the album, because I've seen it, I've never actually listened to it. Thanks to the streaming services now, I listen to it. The first thing you say on stage is Albert King, the great blues guitar player, singer, is in the audience. Were you friends with him?
No, he just happened to hear that I was in the area, and he was playing somewhere nearby, and he came.
The band.
Yeah, and at that time, the owner of that place, his name was Sam Perry. He was a white guy, but he had leased it to a black guy named Benji. I cut the album in my neighborhood, a black club called Benji's. Now, at that moment, Sam came in to get the rent, and it was just ironic. And I saw him. I didn't know what he was getting the rent, but I found out later he came in to get the money. And when I was on stage, and I said, I saw Sam Perry. I said, look how crowded the place is. I said, look at this place, Sam. If you'd have known black people spent this much money, you'd have let them in here when you owned this place. And Albert King, I said, to him, remember the album? This was all ad lib. I said, one of the great blues singers of all times. I said, I know black folks think that it was black folks who brought blues to this country. I said, that's nonsense. It was white folks. And now I go, ooh. I said, no. If it wasn't for white folks, you wouldn't have anything to be blue about. That's what brought the blues.
That killed me when I heard that line. You definitely want to check out that album if you're on Spotify or any of the streaming sites. But one of the shows you were on that I guess in some ways changed your life, because otherwise you might have gone in the same sitcom direction that your partner Tim did, was the Sammy Davis Jr. show.
Well, yeah, Sammy. I had seen Sammy doing a remarkable thing when I was with the comedy team, and I was a big fan. And so I wanted to do his show. He had a TV show called Sammy and Company out of Lake Tahoe, out of Harris on Lake Tahoe. And I did the show, and I did routines about growing up in a black neighborhood, and Sammy just fell off the couch laughing. He just thought it was so funny. And he said, on the show, I'm going to take you on the road with me. And he did. He took me on the road for 3 years, taught me so many things about our business, and just was an incredible human being and an enormous talent. I can't stand today when I see young black guys making fun of him or trying to ape him and stuff. He was just, he could sing as good as anybody out there. Frank Sinatra said, I never heard Sammy hit a clinker. He was a pure singer. He could dance better than anybody out there. He could play piano. He could play the drums. He could play the piano. He could do he played trumpet. He could do impressions better than any impressionist out there, better than any impressionist. There wasn't anything he couldn't do on a stage. He was an amazing.
What is this? I mean, I've never seen. Unfortunately, I never got to see him perform. What was his show like? What did did he come out singing a song? Did he come out talking?
No. I tell you what he did for me. When we went to Caesar's Palace, I had never worked Las Vegas. Trying to get in Las Vegas. Sammy Davis, I'm taking you to Las Vegas with me. We went to Caesar's. Normally, the big acts, they didn't put the opening act's name on the marquee. They're so big. Tom Jones and Diana Ross, when they put their name on the marquee, there wasn't room for you to park your car in the parking lot. It was so big,
I've heard Pat Cooper rant and rave about that.
Sammy put my name on the marquee huge. He made sure they put my name up there. When we went into Caesars, at rehearsal, Nat Brandywine said to me, Tommy, you'll do 20 minutes. Sammy does an hour and 10. And Sammy said, hold it, Nat. This is Tommy's first time here in Las Vegas. He's got to score. All the critics will be in the audience. If Tommy scores, they'll have him back. And every comedian hated the work Caesar's Palace, a real high ceiling. And they serve dinner. A high ceiling, you need a low ceiling as a comedian because laughter is sound. It is a ceiling and comes at you. So you set your timing off of that full room of laughter. But when they're a high ceiling, it doesn't sound as well. It's thin. And meanwhile, also when people are eating dinner, you're dead. Waiters and waitresses are roaming through the room, just interrupting everything.
They're concentrating on what they're eating.
Yeah. And people, they're either going to stop laughing to eat or stop eating to laugh,
Right.
And what they do, they end up pointing the fork at you. Instead of laughing, they have a mouthful, they go, they point the fork at you, But Sammy knew that. He said, Nat, I'll come out and I'll do 3 or 4 songs, and then I'll bring Tommy out. Well, Sammy would go out, and when the waiters and waitresses, he'd come out singing, When the waiters and waitresses saw Sammy come out, they would grab food from people. They knew they had to get that room cleared when the headliner came out. They'd be grabbing food from people who weren't finished eating yet, But when he finished his 4th song, now the audience is palm of his hand. And he would say every night, folks, you've been sticking with me through the good years and the bad years. I think of my audience as family, and you've always stuck by me. When people do that for you, you want to bring them a gift. I got a gift for you. I saw this kid on my show, blah, blah, blah. It's his first time in Las Vegas. Welcomes Tom Dreesen. I mean, the audience was up. Every night I would score because he did that for me. He was such a good human being, and he was right. I've performed in Vegas years and years and years of my career and still do.
What was he like off stage? Because it always seemed to me he was always searching for something. I would see interviews with him, and it wasn't until the end of his life he was really secure that, okay, I'm Sammy Davis Jr. But he always had the jewelry, the flash. It always seemed like he was trying to prove himself, even though he had nothing to prove.
Well, he had a sign hanging in his dressing room that he couldn't pay heed to, but it was very impressive. The sign said, I don't know the meaning of success, but I do know the meaning of failure. It's when I try to make everybody love me. And Sammy Davis Jr. wanted everybody to love him. And he'd go on stage and he would sing for you and work for you. He'd get standing ovations. You know, his one problem, he didn't know when to get off sometimes. You know, Frank Sinatra always said 90 minutes now. Years ago, he said, there's two things new entertainers do not know how to do. One is how to get on a stage, and the other is how to get off.
Right.
Always leave them wanting a little bit more.
Yeah, see, I need to learn that. I get so wrapped up on stage, I don't want to leave. You open for all these great singers. I'm sorry, Hannah, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, I'm just listening.
I know between Tom and me, I know it's hard to get ordered edgewise. I want to get you in there, but
Yeah.
How you would think that through Sammy, that's how you got Sinatra, but that's not the case. I think at that time they were estranged. Is that correct?
Yeah, they weren't. Frank wasn't talking to him because Sammy was doing cocaine, and Frank knew it, and Frank didn't like that at all. So they didn't talk for like 4 years. But then they got together. But no, Sammy would talk about Frank. He loved Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra did so many things for him. He loved Frank. But I was working with Smokey Robinson, turned with Smokey, and we were at Caesars in Lake Tahoe, and Frank was appearing next door at Harrah's, and I had worked Harrah's many times. So one night, it shows you how fate is again. I was working there for 1 week. I could have went any night, but on this particular night, I decided to run over to Harrah's, and I told them I was coming. So the maitre d' said, "Tommy, I'll have a place for you. Just come over after your show." I didn't even change out of my stage clothes. I came off stage and I rushed over to Harrah's. It's only 2 doors away. And as I was running into the showroom, the vice president of Harrah's Hotel saw me, and he was talking to a big heavyset guy with a cigar. And he said, "Tommy, come here." And I went over there and he said, "Tommy, this is Mickey Rudin." And I recognized the name. That was Frank Sinatra's lawyer. And he said, "Mickey, this is Tom Dreesen, and I think Tom would make a great opening act for Frank Sinatra." And the lawyer got a pained expression on his face, like he heard that a million times. And he said, he winked at the vice president, and I caught the wink. And he looked at me. He said, "Hey, kid, if I gave you a week with Frank, would you want more than 50,000? I said, Mr. Rudin, put it this way. If you gave me a week with Frank, would you want more than 50,000? He said, "Oh." He said, "I like this kid." He started laughing. And a week later, they called me and said, "Would you like to work with Frank Sinatra 1 week at the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I figured, well, I'll do 1 week. I'll try to get my picture taken with him and maybe hang at the bar back in Chicago, And what happened was, the second night I was with him, he and his wife Barbara took me out to dinner. And in the middle of dinner, I can remember like it was yesterday, he set his knife and his fork down, and in the middle of dinner, and he said to me, he looked at me, and "I like your style. I'd like you to do a few other dates with me if you're interested." And I didn't say, "Let me check my calendar." I said, "Yeah." And it turned into 14 years, 45, 50 cities a year, a great friendship, one that I'll always treasure. He was like a father to me toward the end of my life, or end of his life, I mean. And then I was a pallbearer at his funeral, and I spoke at his funeral. And I miss him every day. I miss him. He was larger than life. It's hard to describe what it was like to be in his presence. He was larger than life, and we ended up having this great relationship.
Now, and I've got lots of Sinatra questions, but before we get to that, how was Smokey Robinson? I mean, obviously a great singer.
Oh, and a legend. Are you kidding me? Smokey Robinson, he wrote like over 5,000 songs. Right now, as we're speaking, Smokey's getting a check from ASCAP. He wrote so many songs. Smokey we became such good buddies because we played golf together, and every year I would run 26 miles in Chicago for multiple sclerosis. My sister Darlene had MS, and so I called it 26 miles for Darlene. And I'd bring celebrities into Chicago with me to run part of the way, a mile, 2 miles a block. Frankie Valli, Frankie Avalon, Tony Danza, the Chicago Cubs, the Chicago Bears, Jim McMahon, all those guys. They would all come
just all your buddies,
Yeah, well, they would come run part of the way with me. Smokey's the only one who ran all 26 miles with me. And
he's in good shape.
Yeah, he's a dear friend. I love him. He calls me baby brother. If I call him right now, I call him Rabbit. I always remind me of a little furry rabbit. I call him Rabbit. You say, baby.
You know what impressed me about Smokey Robinson? Not only because his singing's great, and even if those songs live forever, whether they're cover versions or whatever, everybody loves them. He was on HBO, had a poetry show, Def Poetry Jam, and he did a poem on there, blew me away.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
Oh yeah, I said to him one time, when did you start singing? He said, oh, around 18 months. So, he was on Entertainment Tonight one time, and they said to him, he was talking about me, and it's apropos of all of us that are from neighborhoods. They said, how long have you known Tom Dreesen? He said, all my life. And they said, really? I thought you grew up in Detroit and Tom grew up in Chicago. He said, no, but there's certain people that you meet and you're with them 5 or 10 minutes and you feel like you've known them all your life. And that's the way I was with Smokey. Out here in Hollywood, Hollywood's full of pompous, spoiled brat celebrities. Pompous, spoiled brats who think that they've been on a sitcom.
Don't talk about Hannah that way. Come on.
Hey.
They've been on a sitcom 1 year, and now they're going to tell you how foreign affairs. They're telling generals in the army how to run foreign affairs. Because a sitcom, and they know everything. They're spoiled brats. But when I came out here, I don't have a degree from academia. I got a doctorate from the streets. I grew up literally on the streets. That's what my book is all about. Still standing, because I grew up on the streets. And when I came out here, I gravitated to people like that. My friends. We used to have a group we jokingly called the IMO, Italian Men Only. It's Joe Pesci and Dennis Farina and James Darren and Frankie Avalon and Joe Mantegna and Gary Sinise I'm leaving out names, but we were neighborhood guys. They grew up in the streets of South Philadelphia and New York and New Jersey, and I grew up in Chicago. We're neighborhood guys. So I gravitated toward that mentality. By the way, that's what Frank was a kid from Hoboken when you were alone with him in a car. Right. When you were alone in a car, Frank was a street guy from Hoboken and I was a street guy from the south side of Chicago. So I gravitated to people like that, and Smokey's like that. And in fact, Smokey used to come to our IMOs. We made him an honorary Sicilian, so he could come to our Italian Men Only groups.
Well, my dad's an Italian guy, and he's actually very impressed that I got you on, and I asked him if he had any questions for you, and the question he had was, did Frank Sinatra, when you were touring with him, did he make you feel like an opening act or like a peer?
No, like a peer. He was Frank Sinatra, so I don't care who you are. You could be Barbra Streisand, you're going to be an opening act if you're with Frank. He was there's never been anybody like him. 60 years. He was a star. 60 years. Mm-hmm. How many people are stars? 5 years, 10 years, 6 years.
Well, you're coming up. You're 50, 51.
Yeah, but I wasn't a star, But I tell you what. Whenever people would refer to me as a star, I say, "Look, I toured with a star. I know what a star is. I'm not a star. I'm a comedian. It's nice. It's a nice." But Frank sold out at age 78. He sold out in Japan. He sold out in this guy sold out in foreign lands. In Brazil one time, 175,000 people came to see him. No single actors, no groups may have done that, but 175,000 people Frank sang in front of. I mean, he was an incredible. But he always treated me like a man. Stage time, you better know what you're doing, because he knew what he was doing and he wanted you to do your job. I had to perform. I had to come up with new material all the time because we went to the same cities, and he'd listen to my show in the wings, But toward the end, he treated me more like a son. He gave me advice and stuff like that. He was an incredible human being. I'll tell you a quick story, and I think you'll like this, Hannah and Christy.
Yes.
We're running out of the Waldorf Astoria one night in New York. We're going to do a gig, and we're rushing out security. We're going out the back way because Frank would be mobbed going out the front. As we're rushing to the limo, security was rushing us. A woman jumped out of the doorway. And the doorman told me she'd been hiding there for 5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
She started screaming, "Mr. Sinatra, please, please." And they were putting us in the limo, and Frank, the security was holding her back. And Frank came back out of the limo and went up to her and he said, "What is it?" She said, "Mr. Sinatra, my husband is home sick. He's very, very ill. If you would sign an autograph, it would mean the world to him." Frank said, "Sure." Signing the autograph, and she looked and she said, "Oh, what beautiful cufflinks." They were like $2,000 cufflinks. They were very expensive. I know where he got them at, but they were really a gift from somebody, but they were very expensive. She said, "Oh, what beautiful cufflinks." He said, "Thank you." He finished the autograph and he took the cufflinks off and he handed them to her. He said, "Give these to your husband." She said,
Wow.
He said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I just was admiring him. He said, no, I want your husband to have them. We get in the limo, and I said to Frank, "That was beautiful, but why did you do that?" He said, "Tommy, if you possess something that you can't give away, then you don't possess it. It possesses you."
Wow.
And I never forgot that. And he said, he told me, he said, Aristotle Onassis, who had billions of dollars, private jets, private yachts. He said, the second he died, that all transferred. That wasn't his private jet. That wasn't his yacht. That wasn't his mansion. He transferred. So nothing we own is ours. We're only using it. And he didn't only talk that talk, he walked that talk.
Wow.
Did he, because every picture I've seen with you and him, you're wearing a tuxedo. Did he mandate that?
Mm-hmm. On the shows, the only night we didn't wear a tuxedo was closing night in Vegas or closing night in Atlantic City or Tahoe or Reno. We'd wear a suit because we'd bolt to the jet. But on stage, every time, I asked him one time, I said, why are we wearing tuxedos? He said, Tommy, if we were going to perform tomorrow for the king and the queen, for royalty, would we wear tuxedos? I said, well, yeah. He said, well, that guy, that garage mechanic in Detroit and his wife, who's a waitress, who work all year long so they can afford a ticket to our show. He said, there's just as much royalty as the king and the queen, and we have to do a command performance for them the same way we do it for the king and the queen. He said, they're royalty too.
That's amazing. That's not like the Paul Anka tape where he's yelling at his. I'm sure you've heard that, right?
The Buddy Rich tape or the Paul Anka?
No, the Paul Anka had a tape where he was yelling. The guys get shirts. Like, well, I guess some guy was wearing a T-shirt and he flipped out.
Oh, I didn't know that. No.
Oh, you got to hear that anyway. But I digress. I get so many questions, and we're almost out of time. But Frank Sinatra, what was it about him? Because I mean, what separated him from, say, like a Tony Bennett, who's a great singer, or somebody like that? What made him just? What was the? I mean, he had this aura about him that, you know, maybe Elvis and maybe Prince or maybe a couple other people may have had something like that. But what do you think it was?
No, first of all, he's the greatest pop singer of all time. Arguably, you can argue if you want. He's the greatest pop singer of all time. Great singer. Steve Lawrence is a great singer. Steve Lawrence once said to Frank, when we were having dinner one night, he said, you know, you ruined it for all the rest of us. Because once you sang it, they know it's supposed to be sung. Frank Sinatra, think about this. He won the Academy Award. He was in 61 films. Forget about his great pop singing. But I once said to him, sitting with Gregory Peck, Kirk Douglas, Clint Eastwood, Robert Wagner, all these talking about acting film, and they were all showing great reverence to Frank, these learned actors. And I was curious. I said, Frank, did you ever study acting? And Gregory Peck grabbed my arm hard. He said, acting lessons would have ruined him. He was a diamond in the rough you didn't fool with. So he danced with Gene Kelly in films. This is a singer, but he danced with Gene Kelly. He also won the Academy Award in From Here to Eternity. What about the movie The Man with the Golden Arm? He should have won the Academy Award. What about The Manchurian Candidate? He was a brilliant actor. So when you gave Frank Sinatra a song, to him it was a script. What did the writer feel the night the writer took pen in hand? He would immerse himself in that lyric and become that lonely guy in the bar whose woman left him and he's never going to find love again. And you felt that. You felt the pain and you felt the joy of his songs. Come Fly With Me. You know, he was, Charlton Heston said one time, when Frank Sinatra sings a song, it's like watching a 4-minute movie. You felt it in some. Now, all of that, this great singer, all the other things he had, and also this aura, was he connected to the mob? Did he know the mob? All that aura. You know, I could talk about Frank Sinatra for 2 hours in front of a group, and when I'm done, I'll say, any questions? And somebody will raise their hand, and they'll say, was Frank Sinatra in the mafia?
I was getting there. Don't worry, I was getting there.
Well, you know, here's what I say to him. No, he was not in the mafia, but did he know those guys? Of course he knew those guys. I knew those guys. When Frank started out in show business, they owned all of Las Vegas. They owned all the clubs. They owned the recording companies. They owned the jukeboxes. When you were a singer in those days, you tried to get your songs on the jukebox. The syndicate, they didn't call it the mafia in those days. They called it the syndicate. You could not, if you owned a tavern or a restaurant, you couldn't buy your own jukebox. The syndicate brought it to you. They owned the jukeboxes and they put what records go on there. So do you know those guys? You got to do business with those guys. They own Las Vegas. You know, so it's a stupid question. Did he know those guys? You damn right he knew those guys. And I did too. But Dean Martin told me many years ago, keep them at arm's length, Tommy. Don't let them do favors for you. Mm-hmm. But they offer you money or stuff like that. You just say, no, thank you. But, you know, don't. But, you know, of course, Frank knew them. And that was the other mystique about him. Think about it.
Did he not like that mistake? Because I know, you know, there's always that tough guy, I'm going to beat you up and all that. Did he like that, or he didn't like it? Or
I think as a young guy, like any young guy in the neighborhood, you think those guys are men of power. You know, they drive the fine cars and they've got wads of $100 bills. I think you're a little intrigued by that they had that kind of power. But he told me the last 20 years of his life, he rued the day that he ever made friends with them. He said, because they'll do a favor for you when you're a young singer. And then you pay that favor back. And then years later, that comes up and said, my dad once did a favor for you, and you paid that favor. And then years later, the grandson said, my grandfather did a favor for you. Dean Martin was real good at keeping them at arm's length.
Right. And he didn't have that real stigma that Sinatra had. But, what do you think of The Godfather? Everybody thought the Johnny Fontaine character was based on him.
Did that film for that reason. Because, is that my ride coming?
Yeah, your limo's on the way.
Frank Sinatra got that movie and From Here to Eternity because of a great screen test that he took. He did the screen test for Maggio. He was on his ass. He wasn't his career was down. I mean, down. He had been the hottest thing in the country, and now was down, struggling for years. So, anyhow, so when he did the screen test for that role of Maggio, he ad-libbed something during that screen test that got applause from the crew when the director said cut. And
Wow.
and Harry Cohn wanted Eli Wallach to play that role of Maggio, and Eli Wallach was tied up on Broadway to a play that he couldn't get out of. So Ava Gardner was real good friends with Harry Cohn's wife, and she kept lobbying for Frank. And Frank admits this. She said, and so finally Harry Cohn said, let's look at his screen test again. And he went in his house and he looked at it and he said, yeah, he could do the role. Frank got $8,000 for doing that role. And he won the Academy Award and totally changed his life. He became this big star again. I want to tell you a quick story that Hannah, you'll like, and you'll like, Mark. Frank told me one time, Frank said, and Hannah, I'd like for you to ask me a question.
Okay.
Frank said to me one time, he said, Tommy, there was a time I was the hottest act in the country. I could call any recording company, any agent, any manager, anybody in show business, and they would take my call immediately. He said, Tom, I could call the President of the United States and he'd take my call. He said, and then I got cold and I couldn't get anybody to take my call. I was really cold. That was From Here to Eternity time. He said, no one would take my call. He said, then I got hot again. And now I'm so hot, I'm the hottest thing in the country. He said, I'd be at a social event and I'd look across the room and there'd be that manager or that agent or that recording company, that person that wouldn't take my call. And I'd look across the room at them and they couldn't look me in the eye. They'd look down on the floor. He said, but what they didn't realize is that now I realized it's show business. That's two words, show and business. I couldn't do business for them. That's why they didn't take my call. He said, it's my fault. I thought we were friends.
And yet he was genuine friends with you. Genuine.
Yeah, well, see, what his point was, and we all should learn in this business, it's business with those agents and managers. You might think they're the greatest person in the world. You'll name your children after them when you're making money. But when they don't take your call, Frank said, it's my fault. It wasn't his fault. It's my fault. I thought we were friends.
But when did you know that Frank really thought of you as a friend and not a coworker?
When he invited me to his home down in the desert, he would come and get me. He stayed up till dawn every night. He was nocturnal. He would come and get me out of my bungalow and say, Tommy, let's take a ride. And I'd drive him around the desert. And that's when I knew, that we had a different relationship. That's, when he started inviting me to his home. And then he'd invite me down there like 6 times a year. I'd go down there when we weren't working. Sometimes we'd be doing a show down there. But when we weren't working, I'd just go down there and hang out. He was such a fascinating, I'm an actor. I'm a comedian first class, and I'm a stand-up comedian. That's what I am. But I studied acting in Chicago, and I studied acting out here in LA. So actors, we observe characters, characteristics of people, and because things that you might use. He was the most interesting study. This brilliant, in demand human being, morning, noon, and night, that you wonder what makes this kind of a mind tick. How did he react to this, and how did he react to that? So I was just a student of his character,
Right.
And I also never let him know how much in awe of him I was. Like I said, because he had millions of fans. He didn't need another fan.
See, I'm trying to do that with you now.
Yeah.
But
I do have a question.
Hannah, here's your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, you've worked with so many extraordinary men. What about women? Who's your favorite woman you've ever worked with?
Well, I worked with Cole, and I worked with Gladys Knight and Steve, Edie Gourmet, You know, Edie Gourmet had one of the greatest set of pipes you've ever heard in show business, bar none. I mean, this girl could sing. This woman could really sing. This, you know, Natalie Cole. Natalie Cole had a great voice.
Yeah, my grandfather's a fan. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, she was really, really good. And of course, Gladys Knight had a great set of pipes too. They were extraordinary women. You know, I rarely, you know, I'll tell you a story that I'm embarrassed with. I rarely had a woman friend that I didn't have a former relationship with. You know, I'm a street guy, so our guy, a girl, buddy. But years go by, and I had a girlfriend named Linda Mancuso. She wasn't my girlfriend. She was a friend, and she was from Chicago. She was a vice president at NBC, and I knew her from Chicago. I knew her family, and she was my buddy, my pal. I never had. My generation didn't have friends like that. My daughters do. They have boyfriends that they didn't have relationships. They're buddies, you know. And that's what Linda was. I could go to Linda and say, Linda, I'm dating this girl, and she says this, and I say that, and then they say, oh, Tommy, this is what women like. Or, you know, she was my pal, my buddy. She passed away. I miss her too every day.
I'm sorry.
You know,
like me and Hannah. And I mean, I could talk to you all day. I've got a couple more questions, and then I'm gonna let you go. But
hey, I'm fine with time. You take as much time as you want.
Trust me, I'll take 3 hours. But here's what's interesting about your career, to me, is that when you started out and you came to LA, you were in your 30s. You were older than the other comics, and you befriended, you know, the next generation of comics: Jay Leno, David Letterman, people like that. And then you started. When you made it, you worked with Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra, the generation ahead of you. It seems like you're always befriending people of different generations.
Yeah, you know, I have a philosophy about that, but you know, so much philosophy about it. You know, certain souls you connect with. I've met, you know, young people at 18 that I connected more with people that were my age. You know, some people are young souls, some people are old souls. So I think, you know, first is energy flowing through time and space. You know, I mean, you know, I'll get too philosophical here, but this is this body that I have is going to die one day. The cadaver is going to die, but the energy in me cannot die. Einstein said, and he wasn't a religious person, he said, you can't destroy energy, it just changes form. So we're just energies floating through time and space, you know, and we connect with certain other energy. So, you know, I never identified with, you know, with any certain age group. You know, I identified with certain people I was drawn to, and people were drawn to me, you know, and I think sometimes we met in another time and another place. I don't know. You know, let me say something else. And Hannah and Christy, you might might interest you too. That we're two energies. When I read a lot of books on positive mental attitude, I used to read this thing about yin and yang, and I couldn't understand what yin and yang. What does that mean, yin and yang? And then I start reading more about what yin and yang is. That we have two energies. Our spirit, call it what you want. Your center, your Holy Spirit, your center,
chakra,
yeah. But we're ego or spirit. Now we weren't born ego. We were born pure spirit. You didn't know if you were a boy or a girl, black or white, Jew or Gentile. You just were a spirit that loved everything that loved you, and you loved back. You gravitated to all this love because you're a spirit. Now, well-intentioned adults, sometimes misinformed, began to program our computers. Little girls do this, little boys do this. We Catholics do this, we Jews do that. We, you know, so and so and so and so. Pretty soon you start developing an image of yourself based upon their information. Thus, the ego is formed. And the rest of your life, that's your fight, ego and spirit, ego and spirit. The ego has an insatiable appetite. The ego cannot get enough fame, money, power, fortune, nothing. It can't get enough. It will drive you to failure because it simply cannot get enough power, fame, fortune, whatever. And so it'll drive you to failure. Spirit, conversely, is like the song of the 70s by the Hollies. All I need is the air that I breathe and to love you. That's all your spirit needs. So all of your life, one of these two energies gets out in front. Now you're driving down the street and you're pulling out of your driveway and some guy's driving real fast and you slam on your brakes and you start cursing, you son of a bitch, you know, that's your ego. You're trying to, this is my space, this is my world, this is my, how dare you invade my space? that's your ego. Your spirit says, oh my God, am I glad no one got hurt? And are you safe, sir? Oh, good luck. Have a nice day. That's your spirit. Now that's your yin and yang the rest of your life. And that's what we're driven by.
Tom, have you ever heard the face you see in the mirror is someone you used to love in a past life? Have you ever heard that?
Is that a book or is that a statement?
No, it's just a statement.
No, that's interesting. And I by the way, I've wrestled with that my whole life. I believe in God. I believe in God, and I believe in a higher power. And it's directed me my whole life. I've been a sinner. I've been a man. I've been a bad guy. But I always feel like I left God, but God never left me, and took me in this direction. And the last chapter of my book, you'll read more about that, about something very serious that happened to me a little over a year ago. And
I will tell you what will never go away is that beautiful head of hair of yours, which has been the best head of hair in show business for the last 50 years.
Yeah, I gotta say, you take the cake. My grandpa, he used to have the best head of hair, but now it's you.
Grandpa's close.
I had nothing to do with it. I'm Irish Italian, so it was an ancestry,
Yeah.
I had nothing to do. But anyhow, I wrestled with all of this stuff all my life. Is there a heaven? Is there a place after? Is this it? Is this all it is? And so I wrestled with that, and I read, and I would interview people and ask those questions. And I really believe that I sometimes believe that you keep coming back till you get it right.
Yeah.
Maybe you keep coming back because there's a lot of books and evidence where a person was 14 years old and started talking about another life that they lived in, and they told the parents. And they went to another village and church, and the person knew everybody. That kind of.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
But you're probably next to Sinatra, of course. And by the way, let me ask you one more Sinatra question, very unusual one. But you say he was an actor and he was able to act out the songs. How come when because in the 60s and 70s he tried doing rock songs, and he didn't act them out that great, like Mrs. Robinson, the Cuckoo-Cuckoo, Mrs. Robinson. He didn't quite have a handle on those.
No, you know what? He recorded, you figure he went to the studio 1,431 times. He recorded over 100 albums. 1,200 original songs written for him. 1,200 original songs. Even Smokey hasn't done that. And Smokey.
Right.
But 1,200 original songs that were written specifically for him. So he experimented sometimes, like most people do in those eras. When the Beatles came along, everybody started growing their hair longer. Only one group stayed on the charts #1 when the Beatles were hot, and that was Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. They had some hit records that stayed and held with the Beatles, but almost everybody started changing their styles then. So you experiment. Frank wasn't afraid to fail. He wasn't afraid to risk. By the way, if you're going to become a success in any endeavor, never be afraid to fail, because they aren't failures. They're all learning points. Everything, there's no such thing as a failure. Every time you fall short, you learn something from that, So Frank wasn't afraid to risk. By the way, great actors are not afraid to risk. Great comedians. Have you ever seen Robin Williams work? I worked with him. He was my opening act one time. He actually opened for me back at
how was it following Robin Williams? That's got to be...
Well, by the way, he was brand new. I had just done a couple Tonight shows, and there was a place out in Newport Beach called Laugh Stop. A guy named Michael Kelly owned it. And I headlined, Roger and Roger were my opening act, and another comedy team called Willie, Tyler, and Lester. It was a black guy.
Ventriloquist, yeah.
Yeah, ventriloquist. And then a new kid named Robin Williams. He was the opening act. He was the beginning act. And I said to the guy, when I said, Robin, I said, what is she, what kind of material does she do? He said, no, it's a guy, Robin. He's from San Francisco. And I saw him do 15 minutes, and I said, there's nobody like this out there. This guy, genius. He was never afraid to fail. He would go out there on a limb. He would go anywhere his brain took him. And he would find something out there that was so just amazing.
Right. Speaking of great comedians, the other friendship besides Frank Sinatra that I think is a famous friendship of yours is David Letterman.
Yeah, we've been buddies since, well, I'll tell you a great story. Letterman calls me the other day. I did like 50 of his shows, but we've been buddies. The first day he came to Los Angeles in a red pickup truck, I was on stage at the Laugh Factory. at the Comedy Store. At the Comedy Store. And I walked off stage, and he was in the parking lot. And he said, hi, I really enjoyed your set. I said, oh, thank you. What's your name? He said, Dave. I said, where are you from? Dave, well, Indianapolis. And I started talking sports. So extroverted, I took it to him, not knowing that he's an introvert and a recluse, really. And had I known that, I would have respected that. But by the time I was with him so long, we started becoming friends. Anyhow, he calls me about 2 months ago. He said, Tom, every time you do an interview or I do an interview and people say, how did you meet? We tell the same story. You came off stage, I complimented your set, and we became friends. I said, yeah. He said, well, it's boring. I said, well, I'm sorry. It's true. He said, I don't get boring. He said, from now on, tell people you came off stage. I was in the parking lot, and I had stole some of your material, and you beat the hell out of me in the parking lot. I said, now, why would I say something like that? He said, because it's a better story. I said, Dave, you got 32 million fans. I don't want to be chased through airports everywhere I go.
Right.
He said, I don't care. It's a better story, and that's the way we're going to tell it. Now, about a month goes by, and he calls me, and he said, Tom, do you know the governor of Illinois? I said, no, I met him, but I don't know him. He said, well, my wife, Regina, has a grown son who's autistic, and they have a plot of land in Illinois, and they grow produce on it, corn and beans and stuff. And when it comes into fruition, they give it to the homeless. And the state is going to come and take that property away. I need to talk to somebody to lobby against that. I said, gee, I know the Senate Majority Leader, John Cullerton. He said, you think you could talk to him? I said, yeah. And I called John Cullerton. John said, oh, Tom, I know all about that. We're going to tell Dave he has nothing to worry about. We got a certain statute in place. It's not going to, And I say to John Cullerton, could I give Dave your number? Could you explain it to him? He said, yeah. I said, John, do me a favor. When you tell Dave Letterman that you're going to help him, tell him the reason you're helping him is because you feel so bad about Dreesen in the parking lot. He said, okay, I'll do that. So now 10 minutes go by and Dave calls and the phone rings. I go, hello. He goes, didn't I tell you it's a better story? I told you that's a better story. He wrote the forward to my book, by the way.
Speaking of the book, why did you have two co-writers?
Well, there were two guys that contacted me, and they said, we want to write we're big fans of yours, life, and we want to write a book. I said, I've already written it. I've already written these chapters and stuff like that. I said, but I need someone that can help me with the narration. And they were brilliant. I said, put a book out that aren't my words. These got to be my words. They said, fine. I would send them a chapter. They would say, okay, this sentence here, could we take this sentence and put it in chapter 4? They knew how to keep the book rolling. As you know what that's all about. Anyhow, so they helped me. But these are my words. These are my stories.
So it was because they're a team then.
Yeah, and they were very good.
You actually guest hosted for Letterman. I thought it was after the heart attack, but apparently it wasn't. He had shingles.
Yeah.
And they had you're a comedian, that makes sense, but he had Vince Vaughn and Elvis Costello and like some weird people guest hosts. But how did that feel? How did that night feel?
Well, it was. I've hosted talk before, so although this was when you're stepping in Dave's shoes, and of course I did the joke was on me when they introduced and special guest host tonight, Tom Dreesen. I walked out and audience applauded, and I said, okay, tell the truth. How many of you out there were hoping Dave was coming out? And they all applauded, and I did that same thing. Now I also had a name tag, and I said, Tom, I said, CBS is going to do this show that I had to wear a name tag. The joke was on me again, And I said, I'm under the thinking that if you're over 40 years old and you still have to wear a name tag, chances are you haven't made it. And it's never bad for a comedian to poke fun at themselves.
Right.
Class, a sense of humor is the greatest gift a God can bestow upon a human being. And a sense of humor is not when you have the ability to laugh at others' shortcomings or misfortunes. It's when you have the ability to laugh at your own.
Yeah.
Didn't it feel, you were, for a night, you were Johnny Carson, you were David Letterman, you were the guy. That must have been an amazing feeling.
Oh, it was fun. It was always fun, but it's always, everybody brings a different personality to the stage, and so I knew it was Dave's show, and I was sitting in Dave's seat, but I just had fun with it. By the way, again,
go ahead.
Again, the number one rule when you go out there on stage, aside from conversation, not presentation, have fun, and the audience has fun. I don't care what you're going through, a divorce, heartache, I don't care what. When you're on stage, I don't care if the material's not working, have fun. The audience came to have fun, and if you're having fun, if you're bombing having fun, they love you. have fun, and the audience has fun.
Mhm.
I've watched a little bit of some of the clips of your show on YouTube. You interviewed a dog.
Yeah,
You interviewed in the '80s. They had this dog, Spuds McKenzie,
yeah,
who was a beer spokesperson. He came out with two beautiful women. One of them was Leela Rashawn, the actress.
yeah. And the other was married to a guy named Gary Fensick, who was with the 1985 Super Bowl champion Bears. Yeah, it was. I had a talk show in Chicago called. I followed Nightline. It was called Nighttime Starring Tom Dreesen. It only lasted a week. We only did it as a pilot, like week, and it should have got. We had great ratings, but ABC was on an ABC network, and ABC had a show already in the can that they wanted to do, and they just screwed my whole show up. I would have had my own late night talk show out of Chicago. It would have been fun, but then I wouldn't have had. Everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't have all the years with Frank that I had. I wouldn't have as many, and I wouldn't have been with Frank to the end.
But not everybody can say they interviewed a dog.
Well, you know what? That commercial was so hot at the time.
Yeah.
Spuds McKenzie. So we thought, why don't we interview why don't we? Spuds was a star, not the girl. The girls, as pretty as they were, Spuds was a star. So when I said to Spuds, and you remember, he looked straight ahead. I said, Spuds, you're a big star now. Yeah, they take you all around the world to different places in different cities. What does it all smell like to you, Spuds?
And you also had Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr.'s wives.
Well, what happened was they were across the street. Frank, Sammy, and Dean were on a tour, and they were appearing in the theater, and they were going to be my first guest on the show to kick off the week because I knew them all. I knew Frank, Sammy, and Dean. I worked with them all, and they were going to be my guests, and I was so excited about that because they were going to be my guest. And Dean quit the tour the night before, and Frank and Sammy had to go to New York to get Liza Minnelli and rehearse her for their show. And so Barbara Sinatra and Sammy Davis' wife, Altavis, came on to sub for their husbands. It was a great show.
That was very nice of them. Were you opening for Sinatra like his last show?
Very last time he ever sang on stage, I was with him. He was supposed to do 3 songs that night for a charity. He hadn't sung like in 4 months. And no one knew whether, we didn't know whether we were going to go on the road again or not because no one talked to him about it because he wasn't in great. But he was supposed to do 3 songs that night and he got a standing ovation after every song. He ended up doing 6 songs. And the last song he sang is The Best Is Yet to Come. And that is on his tombstone. The best is yet to come, Francis Albert Sinatra. Off stage that night, and people were cheering and cheering, and I was in the wings. He said to me, "Don't put away that suitcase." So I thought, "Oh, great, we're going back on the road again," but we didn't. We never went on the road again.
And before I go, and I would love to have you back. Hopefully, you can come back. So I got so many other questions, but you were in Spaceballs. How was that working with Mel Brooks? And were you guys friends too?
Oh God, he makes me laugh till my stomach hurts. There's nobody funnier than Mel Brooks. But what happened was I got divorced and I'm dating this hot chick, kind of like Hannah, but she was hot and she's a tall girl. And I took her to a restaurant bar in Santa Monica, and I'm at the bar and I sat down and she stood and Mel restaurant. He saw her, and he didn't see me, but he walked all the way around and he saw her. He saw her and he said, "Hey, Dreesen," because I had met Mel before. He said, "Hey, Dreesen, how you doing?" I said, "Hey, Mel." I said, "This is a girl I'm dating. Her name is Trish. It was our first date." And he said, he's talking. He said, "Hey, Dreesen, what are you doing Monday?" He said, "Well, I got a film." And I said, "I'll do it." He said, "Wait a minute. I didn't even tell you what I'm doing." I said, "I don't care. Whatever you're doing, I want to be a part of it." So he gave me this role that had like 6 lines in 2 days. I shot 2 days, and it was where I get killed with a can of shaving cream.
Yeah.
But what he didn't tell me was it wasn't him. They kept that can of shaving cream like in a window, and it got sour. When they sprayed me with that, I hit the floor. It was like sour milk in my mouth. Now I'm supposed to be dying. Now they're still rolling camera, and I'm gagging.
Ooh.
Finally they cut, and I ran to the bathroom, had my head in the toilet. Mel came in. He said, "Dreesen, what's wrong?" I said, he thought I was nervous about the scene or something. I said, "Mel, what the is in that can?" He said, when he smelled it, he went, "Oh my God." So we had to do the scene a couple more times, but this time they put whipped cream in. But let me tell you a quick funny story. Do you know the movie, you remember the play, The Producers with Mel Brooks?
Yes.
Show you how funny Mel Brooks is. Larry Gelbart told me that when they did The Producers on Broadway, before it was brand new, after the first act, Mel was in the lobby with Larry Gelbart, and a guy came out after the first act, and he went straight up to Mel Brooks, and he said, "I do not like this piece of garbage you're putting on the stage. I do not like it." He said, what you don't understand is you're glorifying Adolf Hitler. That's what you're doing. You're glorifying Adolf Hitler. And I don't like it. I'm a World War II veteran. And Mel Brooks looked at him and he said, I was in World War II. I never saw you.
Oh.
How funny is
Snappy
that?
comeback. And you were also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that you were in the Clint Eastwood movie Trouble with the Curve, and apparently another famous friend of yours.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra introduced me to Clint 35 years ago. We just became personal friends. He's the greatest guy in the world. We're still the best of friends. He calls me all the time. We have dinner together. But Clint cast me in this movie, and I had the screen test for it. Trouble with the Curve. It was a simple role, but I got to tell you, and I took the clip on David Letterman show. When I was going to do the scene with Clint, I said, Clint, could we do 2 scenes? And Clint doesn't waste film at all. He just doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. I said, but I got a great punch on I can take on Letterman show. So he said, okay. So my scene was, I come up to him. He just found out, he's a baseball scout. He just found out he got macular degeneration. He just came from the doctor's office, and he's in a deep, funky mood. And he comes in the bar, and he sits down at the bar and orders a drink. And I walk up, I'm a character, and my name is Rock. And he says, I said, hey, his name was Gus. How about a game of Keno? He said, not today, Rock. I said, one game of Keno, what's going to hurt? He said, I said, no. God damn it, you know what no means when somebody tells you no? You understand what no means? I said, okay, well, your ass. He said, old age, and he walks out of the bar. Well, we did the scene, it went well. Now, we did the second scene, and when I took the first scene on the David Letterman show, Letterman saw the scene. He said, oh, that's a good scene. Your friend gave you a little spot in the movie. I said, yeah, but he decided that wasn't a good enough scene, that he needed something more dramatic, something, because his characters that, losing his eyesight, he didn't think that was enough to make him angry just because of that. Dave said, you did a second scene? I said, yeah. So now we roll cameras. Second scene. I go up, I say, hey, Gus, how you doing? He said, how about a game of Keno? He said, not today, Rock. I said, why not? He said, come on. I said, no, you don't know means. God damn it, when someone tells you no, you understand what no means? And I said, okay, what the hell crawled up your ass? He said, I had to watch a David Letterman show last night. And the whole audience just roared.
Is there anybody you wished you could have worked with or you want to work with?
Well, Hannah, starting with you, that's a real good question. I probably, I would have liked to have known Elvis. I never met him, never saw his show. I think he might have been an interesting guy, and as that guy, that might have been interesting for me. I pretty much in my era, I pretty much worked with everybody I wanted to. I would have liked to. Sometimes when I think back, I'm a good actor, but a lot of people don't know that. I can take direction. Sometimes I make wrong choices as an actor, but if you got a good director, I can take direction. I think I would like to have done a couple of dramatic roles and work with dramatic actors. Real good actors out there that are out there. Joe Pesci's a real good buddy of mine. I would have liked to. I play a lot of golf with Joe, and I would like to have done some scenes with and Julia Roberts blows me away. And I fell in love with her. I never met her, but I fell in love with her. I would like to have done some movies with her. Some film. Yeah. But that's like Frank Sinatra's song "My Way." Regrets. I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention.
Well, I would regret if I didn't ask you for a Joe Pesci story. You have to have a colorful Joe Pesci story, I would imagine.
Yes, I mean, I'm trying to think of of all the things.
I'm a big fan of Joe Pesci.
He's first of all, you're talking about a brilliant actor. And a lot of people can do drama, but when you can do drama and comedy, and Joe can do comedy, and My Cousin Vinny, first of all, Goodfellas, Casino, Goodfellas.
Okay. Not only that, somebody his size being that intimidating was amazing.
Yeah, he's a brilliant actor, but can we swear on this?
Yeah, of course. We encourage it.
Oh, okay. I won't even, because it's hard to tell a Pesci story without swearing.
Yeah, no, please.
One time I was in the locker room. He said, remember at my country club. And I was in the locker room and I was shaving. And he had just done they were offering him like a 6-picture deal. And he came in and he said, Tommy, he said, I might be doing some film with I think it was Paramount. He said, and I'm going to use some different names. I'd like to use some different people. And he could use you, Tommy. He said, Tommy, you can act, can't you? Now I'm shaving. And I said, I put the shaving cream down. I said, the razor down. I said, Joe, I've been in this business 35 years, and you come in here with a fucking remark like that. You can act. I said, you know how much that would piss anybody off? And I'm letting you go because we're friends, but that pisses me off. He goes, Tommy, I'm only asking. I said, Joe, I'm acting. He said, what? I'm acting. He goes, oh, okay. He said, anyhow, he said, if I do get this part, you get this thing, he said, I'll maybe have you in to Reid. I said, Reid? You know, I said, oh, it was going to be Cousin Vinny too. That's what it was. They were going to do a second Cousin Vinny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I tell you, it was a great script where he fell asleep. He got married to her, and she didn't want to do the film, but he married her. What's her name again? Yeah. In Cousin Vinny too, he marries her. They get on a plane. They're going to Paris for vacation or something like that. And he's so afraid of flying, he takes like 4 tranquilizers and 2 martinis. She goes in the bathroom to smoke a cigarette. The alarm goes off. Before she was in there, some terrorist was in, tried to stick cellophane into the siren thing that, you know, and tried to stop it from smoke. He was going to plant some kind of bomb. Anyhow, long story short, it didn't work, but it stayed in there. So when the alarm went off and they opened up and she's smoking in there, they found this, and the plane was landing right away. They kept her in the back of the plane. Long story short, they wouldn't let her go to the seat. They put her in a jump seat. She lands, they lock her in jail, but he flies on to Paris. Now, when he comes to in Paris, she's locked up in jail in London. He's got to go defend her in London. They had to wear the little wig, you know. That was the movie. We're in a great movie, right? He's telling me that. Cousin Vinny too, he said, Tommy, I'll have you in to Reid for a part after I just went through this whole thing. I put the razor down again. I said, Reid, Joe, Reid, you're the star in the movie and I got to read for the part? You know, I mean, this is bullshit, Joe. I just told you I'm an actor. He goes, Tommy, they make stars read for the part. I said, Joe, I'm acting. He said, you'll never be in any film I'm in for the rest of my life. And he walked out like that. The next day, I'm playing golf with Kevin Costner, and Joe's coming up the 17th hole. I'm going down 11th, and he's across, and I'm playing with Kevin Costner. I go over by the tree, and I said, Joe, cousin Kevin, I don't have to fucking read.
Oh, the life you've led.
That was cute.
Tom, this has been a dream come true. This is terrific. Hannah's always talking about her grandfather. Hannah has such a special relationship with her grandfather. My grandfather died when I was really young, and apparently he was the raconteur and storyteller of the family, William Westman. And I never knew my other grandfather, so I never really had that grandfather relationship. Before you go, and I know you're a big Cubs fan, tell Hannah the story about taking your grandson to Wrigley Field.
My grandson is a pitcher, a left-hander, and he's a real good. He loves baseball with all of his heart and soul. He morning, noon, and night. He's a straight-A student, but he's a left-handed pitcher, and he loves baseball, and I do too, you know. But every year at Wrigley Field, they have me throw out the first pitch, or they'll have me sing "Taking Out to the Seventh Inning." And anyhow, so I took my grandson. He grew up in Orange County, so he's an Angel fan and everything. But I took him to Wrigley Field, and with my family and everything. I said, I have to throw the first pitch out. So I didn't tell him anything until we got on the infield and they were getting ready. I said to him, Zach, you got to come out with me to the mound. Oh, no, Grandpa. I said, no, come out to the mound. He was a little leaguer then. I said, come out to the mound, Zachary, because, you know, I just walk out there with me. He said, oh, Grandpa, I'm scared. I said, oh, come on. And they said, ladies and gentlemen, you know, blah, blah, blah. They're announcing, comedian, Tom Dreesen. People are applauding. I said, oh. I raised my arm up like I was waving to the crowd, and I looked at Zachary. I said, I just tore something in my shoulder. I think a rotator cuff. I handed him the ball. You got to throw it, Zachary. You got to throw it. He said, oh, Grandpa. And he fired a perfect strike right down the middle. And I told him, I said, you know, now you can go back and tell all your friends, whenever you're watching a game at Wrigley Field, you can say, I pitched there.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
Tom, it's been a delight. Hannah Christie, what do you think of Tom?
I think you are a fascinating and lovely man.
Thank you so much for sharing all your stories. We love them.
Oh, that's kind of you. Thank you very much.
And you know how you were saying about Sinatra, how you know, you really connect with, and somebody that just is down to earth and very friendly, and that's you. I mean, you've accomplished so many things, but you're just a down-to-earth, blue-collar guy, a regular guy.
Yeah. Again, if you grew up like I grew up, you know, with 8 kids in the family and the struggles you go through, I don't think that ever leaves you, you know, that no matter where I was, and Frank Sinatra's jet, on stages with Frank Sinatra, on the Tonight Shows, all the fortunate things that I've been done in my career. But if wherever I was, performing at the White House, performing on Ellis Island where my ancestors came, wherever I was, if I close my eyes, I see a little boy with a shoe shine box, trudging through the snow, going from tavern to tavern, trying to make money to feed his brothers and sisters. I'm only a heartbeat away from that boy. That's who I really am. So I'm grateful for any friendships and any success in life.
Everybody, all these stories that you heard, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Go to Barnes & Noble, go to Amazon, go to your local bookstore, and please support them and all small businesses, and get Still Standing, my journey from streets and saloons to the stage in Sinatra. I can't wait to read it. And I know I'm going to be getting copies for friends and relatives of mine as well.
Yes.
So,
Oh, that will help. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think anybody who listens to this show, if you're a comedian, you're an aspiring comedian, or if you just love show business, it's a great story.
Well, thanks so much, Hannah, Christy, and Mark.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. I hope that we meet somewhere in the near future where we can.
I hope so too.
Hopefully, you'll be on stage in front of an audience soon. And who knows, maybe a year from now or 6 months from now, we'll be in the studio together. I hope so.
I hope 6 months from now at least.
Oh, I hope so too. Well, God bless you all.
Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
You too.
Bye-bye.